Closing costs? Closing costs? Who said anything about closing costs? And who pays them? Why am I paying them? Shouldn't the other guy be paying them? Well, I'm Donna Hastings. I'm Keller Williams. I've been selling real estate for over 20 years, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about closing costs, who pays what, and all that other good stuff. So stick around for a minute or two. Okay, so let's get right into closing costs. So as a buyer, you're a totally different set of closing costs than what a seller pays. And please let me tell you too, depending on what state you're in, everything can be different. And also even from county to county within your state, it can be different. So I'm in Pinellas County of Florida, which is St Pete Clearwater area of Florida. And I can tell you what happens right here, but in your area, you'll need to get a great realtor in your area to tell you what your typical closing costs are, whether you're a buyer or seller. But in general, I can certainly give you a good idea of what they are going to be. So as a buyer, now if you're a cash buyer, the only thing you have to pay for is the recording of the title into your name. You certainly should be paying for a home inspection so that you know what you're buying. You have the option to pay for a survey if you'd like to get one of those, and certainly your option to hire your own attorney and have them review the paperwork. In Florida, we use title companies to close all of our contracts, so we don't necessarily have attorneys for every contract, for every closing. So you as a cash buyer can certainly choose to have an attorney. You can choose to get the survey. I highly recommend you do the home inspection, and you have to pay for the title to be recorded in your name. A couple of $100 for that one. Home inspection, depending on the size of the house, I'd roughly say about $400 to $500 for that. If you're going to get insurance, then you'll need a 4-point and a wind mitigation report as well, which could be another couple hundred. And so that's about it for a cash buyer. Cash buyers got it real easy, so that's why I figured I'd get that one out of the way. If you are a buyer getting a mortgage, well, you have a lot more types of closing costs because your lender is going to absolutely 100% require a survey to be done, require an appraisal to be done. However, I have heard of a couple of lenders that have waived the appraisal, but anyway, that's another story. So survey, appraisal, you're going to have to pay for recording fees as well. You're going to have to pay for an owner's title policy and the lender's title policy. What is that? Well, the lender's title policy says it's a legal documents that get filed that says if you don't make your payment to the lender, that the lender has the right to foreclose on the property. So that's something you do want, or that your lender is going to want. A title policy that you would want to pay for says that if 2 years from now, after you buy your house, somebody comes knocking at your door who says, hey, this was my cousin's house and they died and they owed me money in their will, that's a title cloud on the title. And so if you purchased title insurance at your closing, then that will be covered. If somebody comes knocking at your door saying that they have a lien on the house, then the title company will take care of that. Hope that one made sense. So you also have to pay for 1 year's homeowner's insurance up front. You also have to pad your escrow account for your property taxes and for your insurance. There's a lot of other lender fees that you would also have to pay for. Roughly, depending on a lot of different things, but roughly you could say about 3%, 4% of your purchase price can be your closing costs. And that's just a rule of thumb. That's not a guarantee. Your lender should give you what's called an estimated fee sheet. And that'll show all the numbers on where everything goes. And they give that to you up front. Now, some lenders will tell you that, hey, I don't have a property address, so I don't know how much your homeowner's insurance is going to be or your property taxes is going to be. So I would just tell them to kind of guesstimate, or just, If I'm buying a $400,000 house, it's likely that my homeowner's insurance is going to be around $2,000, $2,500. If I'm buying a $400,000 house, it's likely that my property taxes are going to probably be around $4,000 or $5,000. So use those numbers if you don't have an actual address to plug into the estimated fee sheet, so your lender can show you all the numbers of what your closing costs are going to be and where they go. That fee sheet will also show you what your estimated monthly payment is going to be as well. So getting that fee sheet is very, very, very important. And just a little tidbit too, when you go to closing, 3 days before closing, your lender has to supply to you a closing disclosure, and those numbers you could compare to the original fee sheet, and the lender has to be within 3% of the original fee sheet to when they go to closing, okay? So that's all about buyer closing costs. So now, if you're a seller, what are your closing costs? Typical closing costs, you're going to pay title policy to make sure that all the liens get cleared up before closing. If you have a mortgage or a judgment or anything else like that, there's a fee for the title company on that. There's doc stamps on the deed. That's what the government takes. There's the real estate commission. There's some recording fees that are very minimal. You'll also pay for property taxes for the year that you close. So right now we're in June of 2022. So if you closed in June of 2022, you own the property from January to your closing date. So you owe the taxes for that time frame. And the title company is going to prorate them and take that amount at closing and give the buyer that amount of money. And when the bill comes out in November, because here our property tax bill comes out in November of the year, at the end of the year, and so the buyer would have to pay that then. So that makes sense. If we're closing in June, the bill doesn't come out until November, so you as a seller have to give the buyer your portion of the property taxes from January to June at the closing table, and then the buyer pays for the property taxes in full come November. How do we know what the bill is going to be in November? We don't. The title company uses it usually based on last year's taxes and tries to give a guesstimate that way. So seller pays for title policy, doc stamps, real estate commission, recording fees, property taxes, pay off your mortgage or any other liens that are on the property, any fees, late fees or anything like that that your lender might be collecting would also be collected at the closing table, or any judgments on the property, those would all have to be collected. So, and then if the buyer asks for any repairs, or they ask you to pay their closing costs, that should all be written in the contract from the very beginning so you can see what you're agreeing to. So that's basically what we do here in Pinellas County, Florida, what buyers pay for, what sellers pay for. Is that always the case and never changes? No, everything's always negotiable. So if you're a seller, you can always ask for that to be paid, and then vice versa. But when you're in a seller's market, the buyer has to put their best foot forward, so buyers aren't asking for closing costs to be paid on their behalf during a seller's market. But in a buyer's market, buyers are asking for their closing costs to be being paid. So that was another video that I did about buyer's market and seller's market, and you can probably check that out in my channel. So that's difference between closing costs. So thank you so much for listening to this. If you like this video, if you paid something different for closing costs, comment below. Let us know what happened in your transaction. Or if you have a question, please feel free to do that too. I'm always happy to answer any questions. My name again is Donna Hastings. I'm with Keller Williams Realty. My number is 727-481-7533. Thank you so much. Take care, and please subscribe.